Hi, I'm David Saville. I'm a life coach and I train life coaches to create radical transformation in a single session and create unique services that their clients love to pay for. I have a range of services called Becoming Superhuman, which are a range of immersive events, online courses and live adventures designed to transform you into the superhuman version of yourself, where you can handle anything, create anything you want and choose to be powerful. I also want to raise global standards, training leaders of companies, leaders of countries, rippling throughout the world, creating a future generation of children who embrace risk, naturally help others, and seek to live lives that mean something. Welcome to Becoming Superhuman. So, do you compare yourself negatively to others? If you do, you're most likely misunderstanding what is really going on and misusing the mechanism of comparison. It's very common. I work with a lot of people. I've worked with over 700 individuals actually over the past 5-6 years, coaching them to create extraordinary things in their lives, coaching a lot of coaches as well, entrepreneurs, people who run businesses, and across the board. I don't think I've coached anyone who doesn't have this misunderstanding going on at some point. Normally earlier in the journey, it's more common, but it very much comes up at different parts of people's lives. There's so many things, aren't there, for us to compare ourselves to. There are, when you think about it, like how we look. I mean, me myself, right? I had an operation on my shoulder just a few weeks ago. And what this meant is that my training has been deeply impacted, right? I had a sling for a while, couldn't use this arm. I've lost a lot of muscle in this arm completely, actually. And I've not been able to train the rest of myself as I could have done. So if I was to walk around comparing myself to people who've been training, well, all I would do is look negatively and notice what's different. Where am I weak and where are they strong, right? What other things like intelligence, how successful we are, how much money we make, what kind of house we live in, what kind of car we have, and all those wonderful things that people, that we compare ourselves to, that we are deluded that we need to compare ourselves with. And because there's so many things to compare ourselves to, and because of the nature of comparison and the nature of the way we're conditioned to believe and to want certain things. I mean, of course, the media is part of this and society, but a lot of the problems actually is growing up. We have no inner child. At least this is the way I understand it to be. We are children, right? We are just bigger and we've lived a lot longer. But we are still the children we were. So a lot of these habits, a lot of these problems were created then when we had to compete to be able to rise up, whether it be at school or any other places. And so what that means is that we misuse it. So comparison is a wonderful thing because how would we possibly know what is possible if we didn't have someone to compare ourselves to? You look at someone like Usain Bolt, right? If he didn't have the fastest athlete in the world to compare himself to, how would he have known what bar to rise towards? And this is, in sport, it's obvious, isn't it? When we look at athletes, they need to know how high to jump. I remember actually when I was a kid, I jumped 185, when I was like 13 years old in the high jump. Didn't know this at the time, of course, because my teachers in their wisdom didn't bother to mention this to me. But it's only 50 centimetres below the world record when I was 13 years old, right? I was a lot shorter as well. Didn't know that. If they'd have told me that, if I'd have had that comparison, I might have cared enough to have trained and developed in that way, and who knows where that may have led. Comparison is a wonderful thing. So the misuse of it is thinking that you're stuck where you are. The reason I'm sharing this actually is because on my Facebook page, on one of my videos that I posted recently, I was having an exchange with someone, and the comparison thing came up, and he was saying he wishes he would feel like he's enough and that he would only be able to compare himself to himself. And my response to him was, although that is useful, it's very important to compare ourselves to ourselves. It's also very important to compare ourselves to others. Think about this for a moment. If we didn't compare to others, we would probably be living either in shacks, in caves, because if we didn't compare ourselves to others, other people would have created houses and stuff, but we wouldn't, would we? Because we'd have nothing to compare to. Where would the competition be? Well, the clothes we're wearing and everything really that we're used to in our environment has been created because of healthy. Well, it's not always healthy, but healthy comparison is a good part of why we're here. We need it. So the answer, the solution is to stop seeing it in an identity fixed fashion. And instead of that, think about in terms of behavior, in terms of skill sets, in terms of what you want to do. So as I said to him, I said, who do you want? Who are you comparing yourself negatively to right now? What has that person done that you want to do? How did that person do it? Research what they did, and then if you want to, work towards that. Use the energy that you're currently wasting, really, feeling bad. Instead of that, translate it and channel it into the work to be able to match or even exceed what that person does. Comparison is extraordinary. I recommend this. You compare yourself. Find someone who's much better than you, who is much further along than you are, much more successful. Learn them, scrutinize them, stalk them wherever you can. So if they're in the public eye, they've probably written things, been interviewed, have videos, that maybe even have training programs. Maybe they even coach people to do what they did, like I do. That's exactly what I do. Whatever skills I want to learn, whatever I want to excel at, I go, right, who is extraordinary at this? I then find them. And if this is the key, actually, it's not good enough if they've just done it, because just doing it doesn't mean they understand how to do it or how to help others. So they need to have done it themselves. They need to understand what it was they did that worked, and they need to have actually evidence they've helped others do the same thing. So have those things combined, and suddenly you have a beautiful blend of a person that can help you excel really fast. Just expand much faster than you could on your own. The other problem, actually, the other thing that people often do is this wanting to feel good enough in yourself. Now, let's make this very simple. You exist, you're good enough as a human being. Let's just put that to bed. It's irrelevant. If you exist and you're watching this, you're already good enough as a human being. Let's stop even considering that. It's ridiculous. It's a mistake that gets in there. Instead of that, there's a bunch of stuff you are not good enough at. Loads of stuff. Maybe the way that you communicate. Maybe the way that you write emails. Maybe if you're a coach, maybe you're not actually good enough at coaching. Because this is something that comes up a lot, actually, because I'm in these different coaching groups and they keep saying, why is it, do you think, that coaches don't create success in their businesses? Why do they get stuck? And I said, from my experience of myself and of the coaches I've trained and the ones I've consulted with and just loads that I speak to as well, the main defining factor is they're not good enough. They just aren't good enough at it. They're not making a big enough difference, which means that people aren't naturally shouting about them. They're not naturally getting referrals. So even without knowing anything about sales and marketing, if you just focus on being extremely good at the art of something, people will talk about you. They'll refer their friends, their family members. I'm blessed to work with some sisters right now. Well, I work with one and then she referred her sister to me. It's an incredible thing that naturally happens if you dedicate yourself to the work itself. So comparisons are wonderful and they do expose our weaknesses, and we don't like that. But the energy that we have feeling weak, the energy we have feeling bad, that's not there to stay with us unless you do nothing about it. That is there to do the work and excel. So, for those of you who want to take a leap through this, to be able to compare yourself to yourself, to do that internal work so that you burn out the need to compare in a negative way anymore, you want to take a leap towards that, probably learning how to transform your relationship to fear will work for you. So if you're interested in that, I've got an audio session, a free audio session you can download from my site, which is becomingsuperhuman.co.uk. You learn how to transform your relationship to fear and develop a superhuman practice. That is a wonderful thing to do before you're going to do anything that scares you. By stepping into this practice that is on the recording, you can transform how you perform. Transform how you perform. I like that. I've never said that before. Do you like it rhymes? So if that interests you, go there now. Now with comparison, there are a few moments in my life when, in the past 5-6 years, when I really understood the mistake I was making. Now one of them was I was having an interaction with, it was a coach who at the time I idolized. Like he He was someone who was the epitome of where I wanted to be. I was at the beginning of my journey becoming a life coach. He was someone who was at the pinnacle as far as I could see it. He only worked in a certain way where he works one-on-one. People have to fly to him. And he charged at the time, I don't know what he does now, but it was $1 million per client, right? And he gives everything to his clients. I only work with a few, but he gives everything. He lives through service. So he's a wonderful example of what's possible, the pathway. So I was enamored and a bit starry-eyed. And we were having a conversation through Facebook Messenger, just a normal conversation about life. Well, it wasn't normal. It was a deep conversation about life, about experience, about coaching, about service, and all these things. And we were having a wonderful exchange. And I was really surprised, actually, that we kept interacting, because I expected him to just go, I'm busy, I've got to go. But he didn't. We just kept talking over days, really. These very long messages he was sending me that were fascinating and filled with insights and we were connecting beautifully. And at some point, the feeling of this comparison came up within me, and then I said to him something like, I'm sorry for taking up so much of your valuable time, something like that. But I appreciate it. Something. I don't know the exact wording, but something like that. Immediately, energy was killed. Immediately, where he was expansive, we were connecting. It was we're developing a connection. Stopped. Became very abrupt, removed his attention, disappeared. That was the killer of that. Because we were communicating as equals. We were just having a good interaction between each other. And then all of a sudden, where we were here, I stepped down, looked up, and put him on this pedestal. And it probably felt a bit icky to him, felt a bit horrible, because it doesn't feel nice when that happens. And so that removed the connection. It broke connection, it broke rapport, it broke what we were exploring. And it was a real good lesson, really, because I deeply considered afterwards. I'm like, well, what happened there? Because I thought at the time, am I not doing something right by honouring his time? But why was his time more precious than mine? Why was I valuing his attention more than my own? Because I compared. And I saw him as being this successful human being, which meant, who am I to be taking up this valuable time? You must have all these incredible human beings in the planet to speak to that aren't me. And that was what I carried with me. And so this negative comparison is toxic, and it will get in the way of your ability to connect with extraordinary human beings. So I strongly recommend you start changing how you use comparisons. You may feel it, you may feel that feeling of inequality, but don't give in to that. Do not respond to that. Instead of that, utilize that energy. So ask yourself now, so who is it that you could compare yourself to? When you think about let me ask a better question. When you think about someone now, someone that you admire, someone who maybe is in the same profession as you, what is it that you're comparing yourself to? How do you feel about that connection with that person? How do you feel about the equality between you and that person? And then ask yourself, what is it that you feel different about? If that person feels like they're more advanced than you, if it feels like they are ahead of you in any way, that there's a negative comparison between how you feel about yourself, if somehow their success makes you feel bad, what is it about their success that you don't feel you can have? And instead of giving in to the feeling and just beating yourself up about that, instead of that, ask yourself, what's the pathway to that? Where's the pathway from here to there? What do I need to do? And then find out. And if you don't know, maybe message the person. Explain the fact that you feel like that they're ahead of you. What would they recommend that you do? Ask the person's advice. Find a way for you to level up your comparison with this person, and just do the work. Because the truth is, with that coaching with everyone, we just got a different level of experience. That's it. Some of us have experience in a certain way, which makes us very damn good. Very good. I don't know. Makes us extraordinary. There you go. I prefer that. At something. while someone else will be extraordinary at something else. And often it will be a thing that you're not necessarily aware of. Something that seems easy to you will be something that you are very good at that someone else isn't. And it could be to do with connection, it could be to do with the work you do, it could be to do with the physicality, anything. You know, there's so many things, even just the way you pay attention. Like for myself, for instance, when I had my severe social anxiety when I was much younger, and what I used to do is, because I didn't want to talk about myself, I'm very good at listening. And so everyone used to say what a good listener I was when I was in my 20s. And the truth was I had to be, because I just wanted to not talk about myself. So I would listen deeply. And then when questions were coming my way at the time, I just felt insecure. I didn't want to be honest about my life because I didn't like what it was. So I just asked them a question, and I had to pay attention deeply to be able to ask a good question so it divert attention from me. So that thing there, right, which was I was a victim at the time and it was a very horrible experience, led to me developing an incredible ability to listen deeply, which has become one of my talents, you know. So comparison. If you feel bad about it, you're doing it wrong. So reassess what it is that you're comparing negatively and find a pathway towards it. Okay, so for those of you who want to take a step towards becoming superhuman, we are on the Becoming Superhuman Live after all. Go to becomingsuperhuman.co.uk, download the audio session where you can learn how to transform your relationship to fear and develop a superhuman practice to enable you to embody the superhuman version of yourself. Thank you very much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please post them. I'll check again later. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.